If, on a freezing winter night, you spot a jet black ambulance parked silently on an empty street, with no license plates, no sirens, and no driver, would you dare approach it? They say, once you step inside that vehicle, you never return. This isn't a horror movie. This is one of the most chilling urban legends to ever haunt the Czech Republic for over half a century. And even today, that ambulance has never disappeared. The Black Shadow in the heart of Prague. Prague, winter of 1983. The ancient capital of Czechoslovakia lay shrouded in fog, pierced by an unforgiving winter wind. Cobblestone streets twisted through the old town, where dim yellow light spilled from weathered windows, casting a scene that was both romantic and haunting. In the Zykov district, known for its historic buildings and working-class residents, lived a young woman named Klara Novikova. At just 24, she was a nursing intern at Vinohrady Hospital. She lived alone in a modest third-floor apartment in a worn-out residential block. Her days blurred into nights filled with late hospital shifts, groggy mornings, and lukewarm coffee. One night in early December, Klara came home from her shift and saw something strange. An ambulance parked silently at the base of her building. It was completely black, no license plates, no markings. The doors were shut tight, and there were no lights or sounds from within. A chill ran down her spine, but she reasoned someone in the building must have had an emergency. By morning, the vehicle had vanished. Klara asked around. No one had seen or heard anything. An elderly woman living below said, "I didn't hear sirens or a single sound." Strange, isn't it? In the following days, Klara began hearing whispers in the hospital, strange tales from patients about a black ambulance that appeared at night, taking people away, never to be seen again. An old doctor murmured, "That story goes way back, wartime, even. But lately, people say it's returned." Klara's unease grew. She started watching ambulances more closely, and every time a black one passed, her heart raced. Was that the one everyone was talking about? Then, one night, while Klara was on duty, a critical patient arrived. The man who brought him in wore a long overcoat and a wide-brimmed hat that obscured his face. He said nothing, just placed the patient on a stretcher and walked away. Klara ran after him to ask for details, but when she reached the gate, the vehicle was already gone. Back inside, she checked the records. No emergency call had been logged, no ambulance dispatched, no one at the hospital knew anything. It felt as though reality had slipped sideways, and she was standing at the edge of something dark. From then on, Klara felt watched. She spotted shadowy figures lingering near her building. She received silent phone calls in the middle of the night, and sometimes she'd come home to find her things slightly moved, just enough to know someone had been there. She called the police, but they found no evidence of forced entry, nothing unusual. Then, one evening, Klara returned home to find her apartment door ajar. Inside, drawers had been rummaged through. On the table sat a single note: "Stop digging unless you want to be next." Terrified, Klara fled Prague. She moved in with her aunt in a small rural town. But even there, the fear followed her. One night, she looked out the window, and at the bottom of the hill, a black ambulance sat in the darkness, headlights aimed directly at her room. That's when she made her decision. She had to go back. She had to uncover the truth. Back in Prague, Klara began digging. She tracked down witnesses, pored over forgotten archives, and chased rumors that had survived decades. Eventually, she uncovered reports of mysterious disappearances in the 1950s, all linked to a black ambulance. Locals whispered of a secret organization that abducted people to harvest organs for the black market. Her search led her to an old military doctor, Dr. Karol Dvorok, once stationed at a now-defunct army hospital. At first, he refused to talk, but when Klara shared what she had seen, He finally opened up. He told her that during the Cold War, a covert government program used unmarked black ambulances to abduct civilians for medical experimentation. The program was eventually shut down, and the vehicles supposedly destroyed. But rumors persisted. Some of them had survived and were still being used by underground groups. Clara was getting close. She could feel it. But she also knew the closer she got, the more dangerous it became. Still, she pressed on, knowing that some truths don't want to be found, and some rides don't bring you back. The Survivor's Journal. What if someone did survive being taken by the black ambulance? Would you dare listen to what he has to say? Prague, January 1984. Snow-blanketed rooftops and leafless trees. Each morning, Clara crossed the frost-bitten paths of Regrovy Sadie Park on her way to the city library, where she spent hours combing through old news clippings, missing person reports, and wartime hospital records long buried by Cold War secrecy. Then one day, tucked inside a dusty, outdated medical book, she found it, a faded note, almost illegible. The only known victim released from the ambulance, Smichov district, 1972. No name, just one handwritten line at the bottom. He is no longer himself. Following the address, Clara arrived in Smichov, a crumbling industrial zone littered with abandoned warehouses. She tracked down an elderly landlady who still remembered the man. His name was Vaclav, a printing machine repairman. She whispered. After it happened, he stopped speaking, just mumbled nonsense and drew that black van every single night. The room Vaclav once lived in had been left untouched, like a shrine to madness. The walls were covered in frantic charcoal sketches, an unmarked ambulance, faceless shadows, and wide, terrified eyes staring back from every corner. After days of effort, Clara located him, alive, but committed to a psychiatric asylum on the outskirts of Prague. She registered as a former healthcare worker to gain access. When she stepped into his room, she recognized him instantly. Vaclav, now in his 60s, sat motionless by the window, tracing invisible shapes in the air with his fingers, over and over, as if the memory had burned itself into muscle. Softly, Clara said, "I know about the van. I need to know what happened to you." And for the first time in nearly 12 years, Vaclav met her eyes. In a hoarse, gravelly voice, he began to mutter. "That night, I had just finished my shift. It was snowing hard. The van had no siren, no lights. It stopped right in front of me. They wore medical uniforms, but their faces were pale, blank. They didn't blink. One of them said, 'You're due for a routine health check.' I couldn't resist. It was like something invisible pulled me up onto the stretcher. Inside, it was cold, like a morgue, but I could hear a heartbeat, not mine, coming from under the floor. Then, bright lights, the smell of chemicals, muffled screams. Next thing I knew, I woke up on the outskirts of Prague, inside a morgue. No one believed me. I no longer felt hunger. I no longer dreamed. But still, I see it. That van. In every waking nightmare." Clara shivered. Vaclav's pupils dilated. His hands began to tremble. And suddenly he screamed, "Stay away from my tea. They know you're looking." Terrified, Clara left the facility. On her way home, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. A raspy male voice. "So, you found a witness. Good. But the next one taken will be you." Then, click. The call dropped. There was no more doubt. Someone, or something, was watching her. That night, Clara didn't return home. Instead, she went to stay with an old friend, Jacob, a former medical worker who had quit years ago after a breakdown. He was the only person she could trust. After hearing everything, Jacob sat in silence, then said, "I saw it too. Back in '79, when I was a student. That thing, it took my roommate. No one believed me either. But I kept one thing of his, something you need to hear. Jacob opened a safe and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside, a dusty cassette tape. It was recorded the night he vanished. Jacob said, but no one's ever dared listen to the end. Clara inserted the tape. A crackle. Footsteps. Rushed. Panicked. Labored breathing. Then, a sharp metallic creak. A hinge. A door opening. A whisper. Don't let them take your heart. That's all they want. Then an engine started. Not like any vehicle Clara had ever heard. It shrieked like metal scraping against steel. Like something unnatural. The tape ended with a single, blood-curdling scream. And then, absolute silence. Jacob leaned in. I've listened to that tape 100 times. But each time, I hear a different voice. As if it changes depending on who's listening. Clara sat frozen. This wasn't just a ghost story. This wasn't just an urban legend. This was something systematic. A program. A network. And possibly, an organization not of this world. File No. 47 the ones who never came back. What if a medical file had been buried for over 30 years? And the patient's name never existed in any system? Would you dare open it? It was early February when Clara returned to the National Library of Prague. This time, she wasn't alone. Jacob had agreed to help her dig through the classified archives from the old Czechoslovak era, especially those locked away in the Ministry of the Interior's vaults, once only accessible to secret police. Under the guise of being a graduate student researching medical history, Clara filed a request to access records from 1950 to 1980. 3 days later, she was granted permission. They led her to a frigid basement chamber beneath the main library, where rows of dusty files had sat untouched for decades. There, she found it. A document bound with thin steel wire. Stamped, File No. 47 Confidential for command eyes only. Each page was marked Top Secret, handwritten in a mix of German and Old Czech. It detailed a project titled Project Zirni Sanita, Project Black Ambulance. The first page read, Commencement, April 15th, 1952. Locations, Prague, Brno, Karlovy Vary. Objective, acquire subjects with rare blood types, unusual physiology, or high genetic potential. Method, nighttime extraction. Erase all administrative records. Transfer to Facility N. Clara's hands trembled. Each case followed the same pattern. Vanished at night. No trace. No contact with family. Near the end, a few shaky handwritten lines read, Results, 37 subjects permanently disappeared. 5 reacted violently. Became unstable. Had to be terminated. Project abruptly shut down in 1967. 1 ambulance unit escaped containment. The final page bore no signature. Only a strange symbol. A black circle encircling a heart. And beneath it, a chilling inscription. Nexus Corpus, the second passage. Jacob, reading over her shoulder, whispered, The second passage. That doesn't sound like biology anymore. Clara felt as if she'd stepped into a labyrinth with no way out. She returned to Vinohrady Hospital, where she once interned, hoping someone still remembered the Black Ambulance Project. In the old records wing, she met Dr. Lenka Krylova, a retired physician now volunteering at the hospital's medical archives. Nearly 80, yet sharp-eyed and observant. Dr. Krylova noticed the documents Clara was reviewing and asked quietly, You're researching the disappearances, aren't you? The Black Ambulance. Clara froze. How do you know? The doctor sighed, eyes drifting into memory. Because I once worked at Facility N, the only surviving branch of that project. Clara leaned in, heart pounding. Where is it? Dr. Krylova whispered. It's underground, behind Vyhrad Cemetery. The door is hidden behind an abandoned grave. No one goes there. No one dares. Jacob interrupted. What's inside? She didn't answer. Instead, she pulled a folded, aged map from her coat pocket. A red cross marked a spot behind a row of worn tombstones. You can go, she said. But if the door is open, don't go in. That night, Clara and Jacob made their way to Vajhrad Cemetery. The wind howled through the trees like something alive, whispering names they didn't want to hear. After nearly 40 minutes of searching, they found it. A cracked stone grave, with a hidden passage concealed behind rotting wooden planks. Beneath it, a black metal door, sealed with an electromagnetic lock. Jacob, using skills he'd learned during his time in military medicine, bypassed it with a rudimentary magnetic breaker. The door creaked open. A spiral staircase descended into darkness. The air was dense, like an operating room sealed shut for decades. They followed the flicker of their flashlights through rusted lab chambers, old surgical tables stained with dried blood, and half-completed patient files showing severed organs and unclassified procedures. Then they stopped, at the thick glass wall of a sealed chamber. Inside was the ambulance, jet black, no make, no plates, covered in dust, yet its tires left wet tracks on the floor, as if someone had just driven it back. On the side of the van, faintly etched into the metal, were the Latin words, Corpora non moritur, the body does not die. Suddenly, Clara's flashlight flickered. A sharp click echoed through the underground chamber. Then, slowly, the van door creaked open. Inside, it was empty, and yet, something was still sitting there. Jacob whispered, "We need to get out of here." But Clara stepped closer. Her hand trembled as she reached out and touched the cold steel of the van's frame. Then, a voice crackled through the old intercom speaker. No source, no direction, just sound, thick and metallic. "Welcome back, Nurse Novikova. You have been chosen. The chosen bloodline. What if your entire life was part of an experiment that never ended? Would you still trust your own memories?" The moment that voice echoed from within the black ambulance, Clara froze. She felt every hair on her neck stand upright. The air around her thickened, silent, unmoving. Only one sound remained, the deafening rhythm of her heartbeat. Jacob grabbed her arm. "We need to go. Now." They bolted from the dark corridor, racing up the spiral staircase, flashlight flickering wildly. Behind them, an engine roared to life. The van was starting itself, but no one was inside. Back at her apartment, Clara slammed every lock shut and collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. In her mind, that voice kept looping. "Nurse Novikova, you have been chosen." How did it know her name? How could it recognize her unless it had seen her before? The next day, Clara traveled to Moravia to visit her aunt, Milena. Years ago, Milena had told her that Clara's parents had died in a car crash when she was a child. Her aunt was hesitant, clearly unsettled, but at Clara's insistence, she finally opened an old wooden chest and pulled out a stack of photos and a faded medical file. In one of the photos, her parents stood in front of an old black vehicle. It looked exactly like the van Clara had seen. The picture was dated 1968, 15 years before her own encounter. "Your parents, they were part of a special blood donation program," Milena said, eyes avoiding hers, staring blankly out the window. "They said it was for medical research, but something about it never felt right." Clara opened the file. The first page read, "Blood type ORH negative, extremely rare. T-cell mutation. Compatibility index 98%. In the bottom corner, a line stood out, written in red ink. "Novikova, approved. Monitoring since birth." Clara went cold. She wasn't the first in her family tied to the black ambulance. She had been chosen, Not recently, but from the very moment she was born. Klara returned to Prague with a new mission: find the entity behind Project Black Ambulance. Jacob introduced her to an old contact, Petra, a former national security data analyst turned codebreaker. It took Petra 3 days to crack the Nexus Corpus symbol. Her conclusion was chilling. This wasn't just a medical initiative. It was a front for something much larger. A network linking human research facilities with population surveillance systems. Petra unfurled a detailed map. Red pins marked every known disappearance. They weren't random. They formed a spiral. All paths converged on one central point, Vyhrad Cemetery. Petra whispered, "This isn't a coincidence. It's a sacrificial pattern, a spiritual design, like an ancient ritual. The ambulance doesn't just transport people, it carries something far more important." That night, Klara couldn't sleep. Something gnawed at her memory. Then she remembered her mother's old journal, locked inside a box she'd never dared to open. She flipped through its brittle pages, and there it was, the final entry, dated the same day her mother died. "If you're reading this, they've come back. The van will return on the night of the full moon, just like 16 years ago. You must run, or you'll be the last. They only need one. Tomorrow is the full moon." Klara made her choice. She wouldn't run. She knew the van would come. But this time, she wouldn't board it out of fear. She would step inside, to chase the truth to its bitter end. Before leaving, she wrote Jacob a note. "If I don't come back, check the third drawer. My journal is there. Everything you need is inside. Tell the world." Then, at 2 a.m., she left her apartment. Praha was still, the streets silent. Snow blanketed every rooftop like a burial shroud. No siren, no headlights. But then it came, silent as a phantom. The black ambulance pulled up before her. The rear doors creaked open. Inside, it was pitch black, an abyss. Klara stepped in. The doors closed behind her. No one ever saw her again. The next morning, Jacob awoke to a message. No sender, no number, just 7 words. "She's been taken." The final one. The journey of no return. What would you do if you woke up strapped to a stretcher, in a place with no light, no sound, and no way out? Klara opened her eyes to thick, suffocating darkness. She lay bound on a stretcher, her body restrained, not painfully, but firmly, as if her limbs were no longer her own. The air was cold, not the kind of cold that comes with winter, but the clinical chill of a medical freezer or a sealed isolation chamber. Suddenly, overhead lights buzzed to life, harsh fluorescent beams revealing smooth metallic walls. No windows, no doors, just her and the stretcher at the center of the room. Then, a mechanical voice echoed from the ceiling. "Subject, Klara Novikova. Bloodline, X1 to 7. Begin synchronization process." Without warning, the restraints loosened. Klara gasped, sitting up with a spinning head, like waking from a long, unnatural sleep. Before her, a door slid open, silently, revealing a dim hallway lined with flickering ceiling lights. She stepped forward. No guards, no instructions, as if every step had already been written for her. Along the corridor were glass windows. Behind them, operating rooms, labs, and tanks filled with pale green fluid. Inside were people, or rather, pieces of them. A woman's torso suspended in liquid, eyes still wide open. A young boy floating in a glass cylinder, his heart still beating, though his body did not move. Klara's stomach churned, but her body didn't react. It was like her emotions were being controlled. Externally, at the end of the hallway, a screen flickered to life. Her mother's face appeared. 1982. A voice recording. Old. Distant. My daughter, if you're hearing this, it means they've found you. You carry a rare bloodline, the one they need to complete what they call the connection. But don't let them take your mind. That's what they truly want. Clara ran to the screen, slamming her hand against it. Mom, I'm here. But the screen went black. Another voice replaced it. Cold. Empty. It's time you learned the truth. A steel door opened before her. She stepped into the largest chamber yet. At the center, the ambulance. The real one. Jet black. Positioned on a rotating platform like a museum artifact. Surrounded by hundreds of monitors, genetic diagrams, medical files. A man in a white lab coat stood before it. He wasn't old. He wasn't young. His expression, blank. His eyes, hollow. Who are you? Clara rasped. I'm the operator, he said. But I am not the master. What is this thing? The van. Not a van. A vessel. A bridge between two layers of existence. Existence. He nodded. Your bloodline enables us to open the gate. It's why you were born. Why you were monitored. Why you became a nurse. Everything had a purpose. Clara stepped back. I'm not your tool. The man gestured toward a nearby glass chamber. Inside was her. Another Clara. Still. Eyes open. Smiling. You've been cloned, he said. That version holds your memories. But you will become the vessel. No. She lunged for a syringe on the tray beside her and plunged it into her own arm. Stop, the man shouted. If you do that, the cycle collapses. But it was too late. The thick crimson fluid spread through her veins. Her vision blurred. Machines shrieked. The ambulance began to tremble. Lights flickered. The walls cracked. A hatch opened beneath the van. A tunnel descending into darkness, deeper than death. As she faded into unconsciousness, Clara heard one final whisper. Her mother's voice. My daughter, if there is another life, I pray you are never chosen again. 1 week later, Jacob stood alone outside the gates of Vinohrady Hospital. In his hands, Clara's journal, weather-worn, faintly stained by time and snow. He flipped to the final page. The ink was smudged. The handwriting hurried, like it had been written moments before everything changed. And it read, if I disappear, don't come looking. But if the van ever returns, tell someone. Let the world know. The last narrator. What if there was a journal that recorded events before they happened? Would you dare read it to the final page? Prague, March 1984. The snow was beginning to melt. But for Jacob, the cold never left. Not from the air, but from inside him. Since Clara vanished, he'd been a shell of himself. When he went to the police, they told him no one named Clara Novikova had ever lived at the address he gave. The hospital claimed no such person had ever worked there. Not now. Not ever. In a panic, Jacob tore through everything he had. Photos, recordings, handwritten notes. All of it gone. Wiped clean from existence. All except one thing. Her journal. It was real. It was the only thing left. But even that was changing. The first page, which once read Clara's journal 1984, now said, temporary data log secondary subject code, J047. Jacob slammed the book shut. His heart raced. He sprinted through the icy streets to the city library, searching for Petra, the code breaker who once helped them. But the research wing was sealed off. A guard stood in his way. I'm looking for Petra. She worked in the basement decoding the Nexus. The guard cut him off. There's no one by that name here. Never was. Jacob's voice cracked. You're lying. The guard leaned in. You should leave. Before you get erased too. That night, Jacob sat alone in his apartment, flipping through Clara's journal, but her handwriting was gone, replaced by code. And then, the final page illuminated with a glowing message. Reconstruction protocol, activate March 16th. Today was March 15th. Jacob packed a small bag. He was leaving Prague. At the train station, something stopped him. In the parking lot, it was there. The black ambulance. Silent. Still. Waiting. Its back door hung slightly open. He didn't know why, but he walked toward it. Drawn. Inside. Empty. Except for one thing. A black leather-bound notebook, stamped with the symbol Nexus Corpus. He opened it. Inside, Clara's words. Her real handwriting. On the final page, fresh ink still drying. I'm not dead, but I'm not here anymore. If I ever find a way back, I need you to remember. Don't let them rewrite you. Jacob stopped sleeping. Strange memories began surfacing, ones that weren't his. Or maybe they were. He saw himself in a white coat, inside a surgical chamber. He saw patients with no faces. He saw the black ambulance moving down the hospital corridors, not on wheels, but in his mind. One night, he woke up standing in Vyhrad Cemetery. No idea how he got there. In his hand, Clara's old map. The underground gate was open. He stepped inside. Everything was as they had found it before, except for one difference. The ambulance was gone. The hallway that once held the specimens, now empty. On the wall, scrawled in dried blood, Nexus Corpus failure. Subject K unstable. Evacuation. Initiate phase shift new target. Subject J. That's when Jacob understood. He was no longer the observer. He was Nex. On his way out of the facility, he heard it. The siren. Not loud, not urgent, but slow, stretched, like a voice calling from another world. He ran, faster than he ever had. But the more he ran, the closer the sound came. The van wasn't chasing him through the streets. It was inside his mind. The next morning, a homeless man discovered a notebook tossed beside Prague's main train station. He opened it. The first page read, "Emergency log if you find this book. Do not trust your memories." On the next page, a single line, "The black ambulance doesn't need keys. It just needs someone to remember it." The final memory. What if your memories could be rewritten? Then how would you ever know what truly happened? April 1984. Prague remained cold, as if spring would never come. A new medical record quietly appeared in Vyhrady Hospital's internal database. Patient Jacob V. Unknown identity. Admitted in a semi-lucid state. Irregular heartbeat. Repeatedly references the black ambulance. Medical history unconfirmed. Doctors called him the dreamer. Yet every test showed he was perfectly normal. Except for one anomaly. His brain held overlapping memory patterns, as if someone had tried to splice a new film into an already recorded tape. Over 14 days in the ward, Jacob never stopped writing. On the walls, on his bedsheets, even on the palms of his own hands. Always the same sentence. The van doesn't disappear. It hides in the memory of those who've seen it. On April 15th, at 3 o'clock a.m., Jacob vanished from his hospital room. Security footage caught only one frame. A black ambulance parked at the base of the hospital. Then gone. No license plate. No driver. That same night, in a small town 90 kilometers outside Prague, a 6-year-old boy named Andrei woke up in the middle of the night. His mother found him sitting by the window, pointing outside. He whispered, "Mom, the ambulance is here. They came for Dad." "What dad?" she asked. The boy replied, "The one in my head. I don't remember his face, but I know his name is Jacob." In 1991, after the fall of the Iron Curtain, a group of independent journalists gained access to declassified Czechoslovak records. Among them, files on Project Zrní Sanita. Most photos were blurred beyond recognition, except one. A clear image of a young nurse, brown hair, deep eyes, wearing an outdated Vinohrady hospital uniform. In the corner, a name, Klara Novikova. But the chilling part, facial recognition software couldn't match her to any known biological record. She did not exist. Not in any system. Not in any world we know. In late 2002, a group of archaeology students exploring the ruins beneath Vyhrad discovered a buried metallic object, Soviet era, shaped like an ambulance. No plates, rear doors sealed tight. One student, curious, tapped on the side. No sound, no response. But on the recorded video, at exactly the 47th second, the rearview mirror reflected something impossible. A figure sitting inside. A girl, in a nurse's uniform. She turned, looked straight into the camera, and smiled. To this day, the van remains sealed and locked in a containment vault, labeled Unidentified Object 47 1984. But the question still lingers. If the black ambulance doesn't need roads to move, only memories to exist, has it ever come for you? And if, one night, on a deserted street, you hear the distant wail of an ambulance, but see no flashing lights, no voices calling out, turn away. Don't look back, because once you see it, it never forgets you.